your kit you're going to receive a 50-metre spool of macrame. This is 5mm macrame cord, and there's a lot of different colour variations you can choose from. For the video today I'm going to use this lovely mustard colour, which is one of my favourites, but I wanted to use the mustard just so it stands out more on the white background. I didn't want to use the white colour just in case you couldn't see what I was doing. You'll also receive 2 larger wooden rings and 2 smaller wooden rings. This is because you can make 2 large hangers and you'll have enough material left over to make 2 little baby hangers for smaller plants like succulents, etc. So the first thing we need to do is cut this macrame, and we're going to cut 6 sections 3 meters in length. Right, so I've just cut my macrame using the paper tape measure that's also included in your kit. And so here I have 6 pieces and they are all 3 meters each. So these are the measurements we're going to use for the 2 larger plant hangers, and then whatever we've got left over you can make smaller plant hangers, but we'll do those in a bit. So what we're going to do is take all the ends together like this and pass them through the wooden ring like this. So we've passed that through the wooden loop, and instead of creating an even split, so instead of pulling this until we reach the middle of the 3 meters, until we reach 1.5 meters, we're going to do it slightly differently. So take your paper tape measure and hold it against your wooden ring, and we're going to pass this macrame through until we get 80 centimeters. So here, 80 centimeters, and then we're going to stop pulling it through. Okay, so now we've got our 80 centimeter section on this back side of the wooden ring, and we have our long section here, which will be 2.2 meters. So the reason we do this is because we're going to use these longer pieces to create a series of knots for our plant hanger, and it's just not necessary for these pieces to also be super long, because you're going to just be left with loads of excess at the end and then you're sort of wasting your macrame. That'll become more clear once we start tying the knots, and you'll see how we don't use these but we use a lot of these. So next I like to straighten out all of these pieces on the top so it looks nice and neat, and then we're going to create a gather knot here to hold all of these pieces together. So to create your gather knot, you're going to measure a smaller 50 centimeter piece of macrame, and we're going to hold it against these sections here so that you've got a little sticky up bit here, and then you're going to bend it over to create a loop like this, and then I find it easier to switch hands, hold these all together and begin wrapping that 50 centimeter piece around the rest of the macrame, making sure that there's a tiny end sticking up here. So just wrap it round. And then once you get to a length that you can't wrap round any further, you're going to get your loop here and pass the end through and keep hold of it so it doesn't unravel, and then grab this top end and start pulling it through. So you'll see here you've created a little loop that's going to catch this end piece and pull it up inside the gather we've created here. So I'm going to take this off my hook because it's easier as you're pulling it up. So you can see now that that's just gone about here. You can see where it's sort of sticking out slightly. And then you've got these little end pieces. I'm going to pop this back on there. So I'm going to cut off these little end pieces, making sure to get as close to the edge as possible, but not so close that I'm going to be cutting any of this. And then what you can do is you can just pull this up a little bit more. Until those ends disappear. And you can kind of squish it and manipulate it a little bit. And then you can chop this top bit. And I like to take the end of my scissors, squish any bits that are sticking out with the end of my scissors like this. And so there is our gather. So now we've done that, what you want to do is, again, separate your sections. So you've got your short pieces in one hand and your long pieces in the other hand. So you can kind of move them around. So here I've got my short pieces, and in this hand I've got my long pieces that go on for a lot longer. Okay, so to group our strands together, we're going to take 2 of the long ones and 2 of the short ones, 2 of the long ones, 2 of the short ones, and then we're left with 2 long ones and 2 short ones. So our plant hanger is going to have 3 strands coming off of it like this. Some people do it with 4. I've seen some people do it with a lot more than 4. I think 3 is good as a beginner because you can kind of fit more plants in there. If you do it with 4, sometimes it can be a bit tight, so I do think as a beginner doing a 3-strand plant hanger is easier. So what we'll do first actually is just group, we've got one group together. All the rest of them, we can just get them out of the way. So you can either, you could tie these with some string or a bobble. I actually have another little hook here. This is a door, so I'm just going to hook that out of the way on this hook and then around the doorknob here. Oops. And just keep those nice and out of the way so that we don't get confused. So to create our first arm, what you're going to do, again, is find your short ones and find your long ones. Now, your short ones are going to go in the middle, and you're going to take your 2 long ones on either side. So we've got long, short, long, okay? To create this arm, this is going to be a straight square knot arm. You can do spirals, which I'll show you in a minute, and you can do a bit of both. You can do straight spiral. There's so many different ways you can do plant hangers. I am going to show you a few different ways, but it's completely up to you. So what we're going to do is start creating a square knot. So if you've never done a square knot before, this is how you do it. So I'm going to take this side and I'm going to pass it in front of these 2 short ones in a figure 4 shape, okay? And then I'm going to hold, so it's in front of those 2 short pieces here, and I'm going to just hold that together with my thumb, so we've still got our little loop on this side. And take it up a bit higher so you can see better. Then this section, so the long piece on this side, is going to go over the top of the piece that we crossed over in the figure 4 section. It's going to go over the top, and then it's going to go into, oh, we just went really bright and sunshiny. It's going to go into this loop here, and you're going to pull that through. Obviously it's a long piece, so it might take a while to just pull through. And then we're going to pull that nice and tight, like so. And then what we're going to do is do the exact same thing but start on the opposite side. So we're going to take this side over in a figure 4 shape, hold these two together, take this side over the top of that piece and then through this loop that we created. And then pull it nice and tight. And then again, you're going to go on this side, do the same thing. So if you want to try a slightly different technique, if this first technique didn't make sense in your brain, maybe try this next one, and then you can have a play around with both techniques and see which you prefer to do your square knots. So for this next technique, again, figure 4 in front of your 2 shorter pieces in the middle. And then on this side, you want to also do a figure 4, but you want to take it towards the back, okay? So you've got 4, opposite 4, this side's in front, this side is behind. So now the side that's in front, you want to push back through this loop and pull through. And the side that went behind, you want to pull forward. So you want to go through the loop with your finger and pull this forwards. And it's the same knot, it's just a slightly different way of doing it. And you're going to do the same thing, but on the opposite side. So this side will go in front this time in the figure 4. This side will go behind in the figure 4. Whichever one went in front is going to be posted through the loop. And whichever one went behind is going to be pulled through, like so. So you can play around, like I say, with both techniques, see which works best for you. I prefer the first technique just because I'm used to it and I can do it quicker, but you might prefer the second technique. So you want to continue doing that and just keep remembering to swap sides. And if you get a bit lost on which one to start with, it's always the strand coming out of the little loop here. So you've got a loop and loop and a loop and a loop, and you always start with the strand that's coming out of the loop. So I'm going to do the original technique, pull through. So you can see here the loop's on this side, so I know to go on this side, pull through. And we're starting to create our first arm. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue doing our square knots until we get to about 15 centimeters. So continue doing your square knots until the length of your square knot arm is 15 centimeters. So just whilst I'm doing this, I wanted to let you know that this is the reason we don't have an even split when we bend it over the wooden ring. Because if you noticed, this short middle section, nothing's happening to it. The length is staying the same. The only thing that's happening to these two sections is they're getting smaller because we are using them to knot. So some people do an even split and then you're just left over with loads of this short section. So I like to do the uneven split just to make more use of the materials. Okie dokie, so I have just done all my square knots, and this is 15 centimetres I've just measured. And now what I'm going to do is take my next group, so my 2 long ones and my 2 short ones, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. So I'm going to square knot until 15 centimetres, and then I'm going to do it with the last group. So next time you see me, I'll have 3 arms, all 15 centimetres, all made up of square knots. I've moved the camera down a little bit, so my hook's up here now, and I have done the 3 arms of my plant hanger, and I'm just going to hook it back up here. To make the actual basket where the plant pot's going to sit, we need to measure. So we need to measure from our square knot here, and I'm going to measure 20 centimetres. So if you've got quite a large plant pot, then you may need to measure slightly more, maybe 10 centimetres more. And if you've got a smaller plant pot, then you can measure 10 centimetres less. You can always hold your plant and your plant pot against it like this. Estimate how much you need to measure. So I'm going to measure 20. Okay, so I've just moved my camera down, so my square knots are up here, and this is 20 centimetres. So now what I'm going to do is another square knot, and I'm going to not obviously pull it all the way up to the other ones we created. I'm just going to hold it there like that, and then do the other side. Like that. So there we've got 1 square knot, and I'm going to do that for each of the 3 arms that we've got. Okay, so I've just moved my camera down again, and once we've done the 3 square knots after 20 centimetres here, we're now going to measure 10 centimetres. Take my measuring tape, so 10 centimetres, just hold my thumb against it. So what you're going to do is, you've got your one where you've measured your 10 centimetres, you're going to take another strand, hold them together like this. I'm just going to move this one out of the way for a sec. You're going to hold them together like this, you've got them side by side, and you're going to take 2 from this side away, and you're going to take 2 from this side away. So you're left with 4 in the middle. So at this point you've got a short one on the outside, another short one on the other outside, and you've got 2 long ones in the middle. Okay, so make sure you're 10 centimetres down, and what we're going to do is another square knot. So this time you'll be using the shorter lengths on the outside, and the long ones will be in the middle. Then what you're going to do is, I'm just going to bring down my 3rd arm, and so these were the ones next to each other like this. We took 2 away from this side and 2 away from this side, so we've created a little V or a Y shape, I guess. So then you're going to take the arm that we put to the side before and do the exact same thing, so hold them together. So these 2 here have already been used for this V, and we're going to take these 2 from this side again away. So again we're going to do another square knot 10 centimetres down. and we can see where the 10 centimeters is because that's where our other square knot is. So like this. Again, you'll be using your shorter sides, your shorter lengths on the outside, and your long ones will be on the inside. Like this. And then I'm just going to flip my ring round, and you are left with 4 here. So same thing, another square knot, and they don't have to be perfectly symmetrical, like so. So we've got 3 square knots here, and we've got 3 square knots here. And as you kind of open it like this, you can see that you've created a loop. To gather all the ends together, what we're going to do is measure 10 centimeters from your last set of square knots. 10 centimeters. And to secure them all together, we're going to do a gather knot like we did up at the top of our plant hanger. So you need to cut another 50 centimeters ish length of macrame. We're going to take the 50 centimeter piece and we're going to hold it against all the other pieces, and then like we did at the top, we're going to create a loop like this, and I find it easier to switch hands at this point. So make sure this little bit's sticking out on the top, and then just begin to wrap . So now what you can do is chop off all of these excess tassels. So you can either chop from your shortest one if you want them to all be the same length, or if you don't mind having a little bit of variation, then you can chop however you like. Okay, so this plant hanger, I'm going to show you how to do spiral arms. So it's basically the exact same method as the first one that we did. So you're going to group all your sections the exact same, but this time, instead of doing square knots, we're going to do a spiral knot. So I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so like last time, I have separated 2 of the groups over here, and I have this group here. So I have my long piece, I have my 2 short pieces in the middle like this, and I've got my other long piece over here. So we're gonna begin the exact same way. We're going to do the start of a square knot. So if you remember, it's figure 4 over the front, this side passing over that bit, and then back through this hole. So whichever technique you preferred when you were making the first plant hanger is what you're gonna use this time round. Now, where we would traditionally start on this side for the square knot, we're actually gonna use the same technique but on the same side. So we're going to do the exact same thing, figure 4, pass over, back and through. So you've probably got this method down if you've already done your first one. And again, same side. And that is it. So no swapping sides, just keep doing the same side. what I do tend to do, once it starts to go back on itself like this, I flip, and again, you're using the same side. So if you're using that side, I'm using this side. It's just easier than having to move your arms around like this. And we're going to keep doing this until we've reached 15 centimetres. Okie dokie, so I have just finished all 3 arms of the plant hanger, and these are all 15 centimetres each. So I've just put the plant hanger that I made earlier next to this one, just as a reference. So here's the straight arms and here's the spiral arms. So I'm going to show you a slightly different option for this one. And I'm showing you all of these different options so that you can customise your plant hanger however you'd like. You could even do a section of spiral, a section of straight, a section of spiral, a section of straight, all the way down. You can do, say here, you could do straight and then you could leave it unknotted, straight, unknotted. Just have a play around with it. Okay, so I've just moved the camera down so you can see it easier. And so instead of leaving this bit unknotted like I have on this plant hanger, I'm going to do a couple of square knots here, 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 just to jazz it up a little bit and just show you sort of another way that you can play around. Okay, so I've just done the same thing on the other 2 arms. So we've got 3 double square knots on each arm, and if you compare it to this one, we're at kind of, actually it's a little bit shorter, but that's fine. So now, like we did on our other plant hanger, we're going to take 2 sections, hold them together and discard the 2 outside pieces, and we're going to measure about 5 centimetres, and then we're going to do a single square knot. So now we've created this loop in the middle, and then we're going to do the same thing again. So going down approximately 5 centimetres and taking 2 sections together like this, discarding these 2 and working on these 2. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull that like this, and this one nice and tight, pull the last one nice and tight, so that these square knots are towards the bottom, and then these top square knots, which are the double knot, are more towards the top. Okay, so also in your kit you have 2 small wooden rings, which we're going to use the excess macrame that we've got to make some little baby plant hangers. So this time around I have taken 4 sections, each measuring 1.5 meters, and unlike the other 2 plant hangers that we did, when we thread this through like this, we are gonna pull it through until it's central. So until both ends are together. It doesn't have to be super exact. Like this. Once we've done our gather knot here, we are going to separate these into 4. So 2 each, 4 sections, and we're going to measure 10 centimeters, and we're going to just tie a simple knot like this. Then I'm going to measure another 10 centimeters and do the exact same thing. And then, similarly to what we did on the larger hangers, I'm going to take 2 sections and hold them together, grab the 2 middle ones, 5 centimeters this time, and tie another knot. These together, so 5 centimeters, and this is where we're going to do our next gather knot. So now I've got one tiny little baby wooden ring left, and I have this much macrame left. So depending on how much macrame you used for your other plant hangers, maybe you used a little bit more because you had a slightly bigger plant, or maybe you used a little bit less because you had smaller plants. That will determine how big your last plant hanger can be. If you've got quite a lot, if you only used small amounts of macrame for small plants, then you might be able to get another 2 really simple ones out of this. I would say if you wanted to do another super simple one, you could still use the baby ring and use slightly more. So we used 1.5 meters for this one. If you wanted to use 2 meters, you could make a bigger one for a bigger plant. If you wanted to use 1 meter, you could make an even smaller one if you've got an even smaller plant pot. It's completely up to you, and it depends how much you've got left on here, and that'll vary depending on how big you made your other ones. So I'm just gonna get this off of here and measure how much I've got left, and then I'll decide what size plant hanger to do. Okay, so I've just measured what I had left on my spool, and I had 8 meters left, so that's plenty. I could make another small one, the exact same I just made, and I'd still have about 2 meters left over. So I'm going to do something a little bit different, just because I've showed you a few different techniques. And like I said at the beginning, if you want to make 4 of the same, slightly different sizes. You can do 4 completely different ones. It's up to you. Just take what I've shown you and just go for it. Experiment a little bit. You've got plenty of macrame to play with, and if you're not liking what you're doing, you can always just untie the knots and restart. So what I've done here is, because I had 8 meters left, I've cut 3 sections and they are 2.5 meters each, so they're pretty long. So what I'm going to do, again, like I did with the last small one, I'm going to pull it through until it is midway. And again, gather a knot, as I'm sure you all know by now. And depending on how much you've got left, you can do quite a long gathering knot if you want to shake things up a little bit instead of the 50 centimetre one. We did the 4-arm one on the last hanger. This time, because I wanted a bit more length to play with, I'm just going to do another 3 like we did for our first 2, and I'm going to do the knot technique again. I'm going to measure, I want more knots in this one just so it looks a bit more intricate, so instead of doing 10 centimetres like I did last time, I'm going to do 5 centimetres. And then I'm going to do another 5 centimetres. And then another 5. So once I've done those 3, I'm going to start on the basket. So another 5 centimetres with these 2 middle ones. Pop it just in here so I can kind of have a little pulley about with it. Take it out. Okay, so as I had the succulent in here, it was not quite 5 centimetres, it was probably about 3. Let me stop estimating, it's probably annoying. Yeah, maybe about 3.5 centimetres. And instead of doing the gather knot, because I'm going to be making another basket over here for another succulent, I'm just going to take all of them and do a big old knot. Now you can do this for all of your plant hangers, to be fair. You could even do this instead of the gather knot at the top if you didn't like the look of the gather knot, or if you just didn't fancy making it. So we can pop our first little succulent in here like this. To make the second basket, I'm going to do the same thing, so 5 centimetres. Okie dokie, so this is going to be the bottom of our double mini plant hanger. So the plant pots that I'm using are the exact same size, so I know that I have to leave about a 3 centimetre gap here. And because it's the end of my plant hanger, I'm going to do another gather knot the same as at the top. Pop my second succulent in.